Do you want more success, more growth, more results? Then it's time for the Boundless Success Accelerator from the Modern Observer Group. This isn't your average coaching program. It's where top performers come to dominate. Weekly group sessions, on-demand coaching, a community that's got your back, and a power-packed library of tools to supercharge your business and career. No more excuses, no more waiting. Get in, level up, and start building the life you've been dreaming about. Visit us at modernobserver.com/boundlesssuccess to join today. Let's get you to the next level. Hello, and welcome to the Success Showcase, the podcast that helps you succeed in your business, career, and life. I'm your host, Eric Lopkin, with the Modern Observer Group, and with me, as always, is Chip Janiszewski from the Happiness and Success GPS. Chip, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. How about you, Eric?
Doing fantastic. And, as we record this, it is St. Patrick's Day, so there's lots of revelry going on. Are you doing anything special?
No, but once a year on St. Patrick's Day, I changed my name from Chip Janiszewski to either Chip Mick Janiszewski or Chip O Janiszewski. So that's just the way it is. I should have put on green socks because I do wear green socks on St. Patrick's Day. But no, I'm just happy St. Patrick's Day to all of our friends who are Irish, and today everybody is. So happy St. Patrick's Day to everybody.
Absolutely. All right. So we have a very special guest today. We are talking with Connie Eishall of Freedom to Create. Connie is a creative marketer and she is coming to us from Dubai. So we are expanding our reach here. Connie, welcome.
Thank you guys. Thanks for having me. Yep, it's in Dubai, almost midnight.
why, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Okay, great. Well, first of all, I do hail from Northern Virginia, Reston, Virginia, but I've lived in Dubai in the UAE for the past 15 years. I'm an artist at heart for sure. I love creativity. I think that's pretty much all I know in the professional world, to be honest. But being out here in Dubai has been great because I've been able to see a lot of the world. I've traveled a lot. I've seen a lot of Asia, I've seen a lot of Europe, and I think with me being able to travel, it's definitely influenced my creativity and my imagination for the better, to say the least, because I've experienced different landscapes, I've experienced different cultures, food, colors, you name it. And I always look at everything I say through a creative lens. So to take all that in has been a great experience because, of course, it's influenced my imagination and obviously being exposed to the world helps, look at things from a different perspective. So as I said, being an artist at heart, I launched my personal brand, you could say, Freedom to Create, back in 2015. So this is about 10 years ago. And it was part of my side hustle, you could say, when I was freelancing and working a full-time job. So I just started to get a lot of new business through my side hustle. And I said, why don't I deem a personal brand? And the reason I named it Freedom to Create and not necessarily associated with my actual name is because I believe that creativity is infinite and beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So there's not really a necessary wrong or right in how a person or an individual perceives art. It's more of how they take on their perspective and their opinions through looking at a masterpiece, whether it's like a ball of metal or it's a beautiful oil painting. Art can come in so many shapes and forms. So that being said, Freedom to Create resonates with the fact that creativity is infinite and it's a very subjective conversation or matter. And then with my personal brand, I finally went in full force and launched Freedom to Create as a fully licensed LLC. We are still very small and mighty, but this was 4 years ago, actually, this month, which is unbelievable. So time flies. And I took that risk right in the end of the pandemic or as we were getting out of the pandemic. So it was pretty risky, but I think it was well worth it. So, yep, that's kind of where I stand today. I'm pushing forward and spreading freedom's wings, as I say, wherever possible.
Fantastic. So you said you've been in Dubai for quite a while. You've been experiencing different cultures, different places. How does that influence your work? I mean, you do a lot of branding. You did branding in the US, in Dubai. What are some of the similarities and differences?
I mean, I would say cultural values have a big play in the kind of branding and let's say aesthetic design that I do, in general, because I've worked with many different nationalities, many different kinds of companies. So whether it's multinational establishments or small businesses or solo entrepreneurs, and depending on where they come from the world, there's different kinds of tastes. So sometimes, for example, Middle Easterners, they like to put a lot of extravagance and a lot of information in their advertising or their visuals. And then Europe, they're very minimal, conservative, luxurious. So it's been cool because I've been exposed to a lot of different styles, you could say, in terms of how people perceive, let's say, quality or good visual communication to their benefit. So I've had a mix of everything, you could say, being out here. But I think I've embraced my style, and that answers a good question because obviously, like with being exposed to different kinds of designs and cultural influence, I kind of found my niche, you could say. I really embrace minimal design, luxury design, elegance, simplicity, but simplicity to an extent where it's not necessarily the easy way out. It's more like creating designs and visuals that create or an impact through sophistication. So it could be the whole saying, less is more, basically. So it doesn't mean just because something looks simple that it doesn't have a deeper meaning or connects to the audience in a certain way. I think imagery such as photos and videos and even things like typography and colors, even though they're all the fundamentals, it's how you use them and they can speak a lot. So I definitely love like more elegant, classical, minimal design.
Nice. Yeah, there's nothing easy about simplicity. It's actually so much more complicated than people realize. I'm blanking on the name of the author, but there was a famous author about a century or so ago that actually wrote these long rambling letters, and he would say, "I apologize for the length, but I didn't have time to make it shorter." Because it
That's a
does
funny
take
one.
it does take time, to get everything you want in a design or in a book or whatever it is to create, and keep it simple.
Absolutely. And I think, and that's one of the statements that actually is on my website where it says like simplicity is the ultimate sophistication, which is true. I mean, it comes to a point, it's how you get the message across. And even they say like that whole cliche saying, I always say it's cliche, less is more, but it actually does mean a lot because I think sometimes the most simple messages are the most powerful. So whoever this author is, I can agree with definitely.
And simplicity has been very powerful. I mean, take a look at what for a long time has been the number one web page on the internet, the front page of Google. There is nothing complicated about it. It's the logo and a search box.
Absolutely. And it's funny because people get drawn into that. And it's almost like protocol in daily life. I mean, professional life is like be on the first page of Google. And it's just like innate in people to be able to do that and achieve that. So, absolutely. And it's a simple thing, like you said.
Yes. So, how did you get into design in the first place?
Actually, when I was, well, I say when I was very young, I'm not super old, hopefully, but like I always illustrated since I was really, really young, like in elementary school. I mean, I would always pick up a pencil, paintbrush, and illustrate. And I think even my mom just kind of knew, like, she definitely is going down the creative route. And then when I was in junior high, I did some art competitions, and I won a couple of them. And basically after that, I started oil painting when I was just getting into university. So did a lot of like freehand in terms of sketching and painting and graphite pencil, charcoal drawings. Because when I was in school, like in university, it was the early 2000s. So back then, it wasn't only like mostly computerized, it was a lot of using your hands and the old school methods, which is great because I've seen the best of both worlds. And then I decided to make a profession out of it. And then I remember my dad told me, he was like, if you're going to be a professional, don't just be an illustrator. You should really go down the graphic design route because this obviously is a bit more commercial and it's like a science of art that is used in all aspects of life, whether you see a menu at a restaurant or a billboard outside or a website. In turn, all this is related to graphic design and visual communication. So I pursued that as my major when I went to university. And then since then, when I got out of university, I've just been doing the same career ever since. So I've not deviated at all.
Nice focus. So
Yeah.
I mean, graphic design takes a lot of the lessons from illustration, but it does also put in other things. How did you adapt to the change starting from illustration, moving into graphic design?
That's a good question. I mean, of course, like I mentioned, I did study graphic design as my core major, but what I did was, of course, I got training, especially in university, on how to use the software like Adobe Creative Suite and things of that nature. But then, of course, in school, it's like our foundation. But then when I got out as a professional, I started working as a junior well, an intern first, then a junior graphic designer. So I started learning a lot more actually when I was working professionally. So I kind of had the foundation and then just developed my skills as and when I started climbing my career ladder. And at the same time, I kind of was stylizing things, meaning that I was combining the use of like my actual hand on paper with the computer. So I would like sometimes scan in, some of my drawings or my paintings and then add layers of like computerized graphics to them or text to them, like typography. So I was doing a lot of that, kind of like a hybrid of print, or sorry, rather like hand drawings or hand work with computerized work. And then as time went on and the digital era started to become more evident, of course, with digital marketing and social media and all that, things really started becoming a lot more digitally focused. So to be very sincere, I haven't had much of a request or time to really illustrate much anymore. It's purely like not purely but mostly digital, that like what I do, at least this day and age, and I guess that's going to continue to be that way for a while.
Yeah, I don't think we're going backwards at all.
I don't think
I
so.
mean,
Sometimes I wish we could though.
yeah. I mean, I actually went to college BC before computers, and I can't
Yeah,
even draw a straight stick, man. So graphics is nothing that I could ever understand, but it's just amazing, everything that's been going on. It must have been very interesting. Obviously, you very much get into whatever that you're getting into, and just watching how everything has developed over the last 20 years. It's more so than the history of time as far as technology and all that stuff. So it's just incredible, and to harness it the way that you have. I mean, I'm looking at your logo there and the sailboat in the background and the freedom and so on and so forth. And you talk about simplicity and freedom to create. I mean, they're all right there. And I love your comment on your web page saying that making an impact with simplicity yet sophistication. And it says, if you look back at your memories, you'll see that the most impactful moments are the simplest of gestures. We remember them because they're sincere and meaningful, and simple and yet compelling design is not subtraction for the sake of subtraction, but minimalization is subtraction for the sake of focus and impact. And obviously, all the
absolutely.
memories and things that I have throughout my life and so on and so forth, everybody, as far as human nature goes, it says, okay, get to the point, get to the point. And
Yeah,
that's exactly
that's
what
so
you do,
true.
cut through all that stuff and just drill down. And that sounds like that's exactly what you're doing.
No, you're absolutely right. And especially with the human race now, everything is so fast paced. So as you said, it's kind of like just be straight and narrow, get to the point. And that's even with human attention span nowadays, especially with the digital era, people's attention spans are like a fraction of what they were maybe 15, 20
Yeah,
years ago.
absolutely. It's like,
Yep.
what was that? There you go.
Yep.
Yep.
You have to put it away, and the minute it flashes up or something, oh, yeah, like you said, you get distracted easily. So we have to hit it where it counts, definitely.
Yeah. So when you're working with simplicity, your key is really bringing out the core message of whatever it is your client wants to express. Do you have a particular process for getting to that message, or does it vary by client?
That's a very good question. And actually, you're not the first person who's asked, but to be honest, it's because like some don't even ask this question. And what we generally do is create something called mood boards. So let's say, for example, a client approaches us and says, hey, I'm looking to do a logo design for, let's say, an upscale steakhouse, for example. So then we will ask certain questions. Like I have always a protocol, like a brand questionnaire, for example, taking some information from my questionnaire. And before we even go into the design phase, we tend to do something called mood boards where we'll do research online and take visuals of like maybe existing brand identities, ambience, images, colors, you name it, like to kind of create like a collage of a style and a look and feel. And we normally give 2 to 3 directions. And based on like one of the directions that the client might choose, then that's when we will then go into the actual design phase where we start from scratch and build like the logo identity and everything after we dictate a direction. Because what happens is sometimes if we go and decide, hey, let's just throw arrows in the dark and start designing a concept or a logo or what have you, sometimes like if we don't build that foundation in the beginning, we might be going in the wrong direction. So yeah, I always am a firm believer of mood boards for sure, because it's kind of giving a direction and at the same time you can like collect all the inspiration.
Fantastic. Yeah. So, I mean, I've never actually heard of a mood board before. Can you describe to our listeners what it is?
Absolutely. So as mentioned, yeah, it's pretty much a collage of imagery or images that will visually dictate kind of the inspiration that we have in terms of the style, let's say, of the design. So let's say, for example, if we're doing a branding exercise, like creating a new logo from scratch, and then obviously the collateral to follow later on. There's so many different styles. So you might have logo designs that are really funky, like for like skateboard brands or something, and then maybe you have very classical minimal logos that are for like luxury brands, like, luxury hotels or, jewelry brands or something. And maybe you have homegrown brands that have a bit of personality. So again, like basically what the mood board is collecting a bunch of visuals in terms of images and drawings and existing logos, for example, that show kind of the style, overall style and direction of how we're going to design that particular brand. So if it's funky, if it's, luxurious, if it's minimal, if it's modern. So these mood boards will like visually dictate that style. And then of course we'll put in keywords and things like that just to support the images that are put into the collage, and then yeah, it goes from there basically.
So it really is an exploration of how that brand is going to communicate, both visually and in language, because you said there's also keywords there.
Absolutely, yes. I mean, keywords in this instance would be to support the mood board. So
Right.
we might say something like vibrant, let's say, for example, saturated, ambient. These words would all be related to the actual visual aspect. But yes, you're right. Even with branding, there is the content strategy in terms of the narrative and the voice as well. So that goes hand in hand with the visuals. So obviously, like in terms of the messaging and how a brand is portrayed to the market, for example, or the target audience, each brand has its own voice, so there might be brands that are, let's say, powerful, aggressive, they have very outspoken language. There might be brands that are a bit more soft, more humble, so then their language will dictate that. So yes, that's a whole other science of branding that goes hand in hand with the visuals as well, definitely.
Nice. So, have there been any particular clients that the work really appealed to you, that it just got your juices flowing?
Gosh, that's a good question. I mean, I think sometimes when we have, let's say, a rebrand, it gets me kind of elevated because it's a challenge. So the brand is already existing, for example, and they're like, okay, we've been in the market, I don't know, 5, 10 years, what have you. It's time for a refresh. I like those kinds of projects because then it's like almost like, okay, we can prove to them like this is what it was before and this is what it is now, kind of like the before and after. So that always is a bit exciting because even though they might be established in terms of a brand, to elevate it and push it to like a new generation or a new level is always exciting because then you can kind of look back and be like, wow, look what they were before and look what we've achieved. And we actually had an exercise like that recently in the summer of 2024 where we revamped a brand for a corporate firm out of Switzerland. And we compared all the visuals and actually did a whole board of like the old and the new, and it was just really exciting because then we could see all the new visuals and the logo design and everything, and we were like, wow, it was like 90s and then it became like 2000s 20 something, so it was nice to see something like that be achieved.
Very cool. So you mentioned earlier you're originally from the Virginia area. What took you to Dubai?
Actually, my parents, my father in particular, and he comes from a completely different industry. He's in finance. So he worked in the Middle East for quite a while, for almost 2 decades, and works for some big financial firms and banks out here. So then when he was out here, I said, "Hey, why don't I try my opportunity and have a international experience?" So I came out and got a job, and I kind of been put since then. So, but now I'm honestly trying to market my business globally, which is one reason why I am networking quite actively back to the US, because at the end of the day, US is home, and now my parents are retired and I'm far away. So, I'm considering a change of scenery, but of course, keeping the roots, to my loyal clients here in the Middle East, and hoping to, of course, acquire new business relations back in the US.
Nice. So, what kind of opportunities have you had from traveling, to Dubai, working internationally that you don't think you would have had if you'd stayed in the US?
I mean, in terms of opportunities, I think it's that international exposure because I have traveled for work before I even started my own business. I did get to see a lot of countries when it was work related. And at that time, I was a creative director. So, of course, experiencing how different cultures work, being exposed to brands that are part of certain regions of the world that might not necessarily be in the States, so it was pretty cool to have that experience where I could work with like brands that have been like homegrown from different parts of the world, and then understand like their way of perceiving visuals and their style of communication and being a part of that journey. So I think that's been a really fantastic way of looking at things because of the international experience. So definitely that's, I think, what I would like to take back with me to the States eventually, is that I've had that international experience and that outlook on being a part of different countries in terms of their culture and how they value, let's say, today's design and marketing reach, and take that back with me eventually.
Yeah, as the world gets smaller, it becomes more and more important to understand other cultures, how they communicate, other languages. I keep flashing as we're talking to an incident back in, I believe it was the 1970s, when Chevrolet decided they were going to start making cars for Mexico. And one of the cars they started with was the Chevy Nova. And they didn't change the name. And of course, in Spanish, Nova means doesn't go. So
That's hilarious. I didn't know that
yeah.
actually, but that's
Oh,
funny.
I missed that one too. Nova. I got it.
yes, doesn't go. Yes.
Yeah.
So it is
Wow.
important to understand different cultures and different languages. And now,
Yeah.
even if you're just doing business locally, you're likely to meet more and more people and do business with more and more people who are from abroad, who have different cultures, different
Mhm.
abilities, different backgrounds. And I think that international influence really is an important thing in, what's essentially a shrinking world.
Oh, absolutely. And when you say shrinking world, it's because like everyone's so much more connected now as well.
Yes.
But that's a funny story you said, because it's almost like whether it's a cultural, I mean, understanding cultures, or being international, or, well versed with the globe, you could say. It's like, do your homework.
Yes.
That cracks me up.
Yep.
That's a
With
good one.
technology, it's
I
easy to
learned
do.
something new today in marketing history. I like that one.
Yeah. Yep. And it's only a click away now. So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
modern times.
All right, so we are actually coming up on the end of our time. So if our listeners would like to get a hold of your company and learn more, how can they do so?
Okay, well, I do have my local US number, which works when I'm here, so I'll give that out. And that's probably an easier one to use than my Dubai number. And of course, my website and my email address. So should I just say them out loud to you if that's what
Yes.
you're okay? So anyone can find me on my local number, which is 571-489-4099. And my email address is Connie, so it's CONNIE at freedom. So I'll spell it out. Freedom to TO create. It's all one word. Freedom to create.biz. And our email, apologies, our website is www.freedomtocreate.biz, which also has a contact form on there, and it has my contact details on the website as well.
Fantastic. So, Chip, what do you think is the big takeaway for our listeners this week?
This has just been a totally fun, creative experience to be listening to all of this history and everything that you do, all of the talents that you have. And it's just so wonderful. And obviously, you're living the dream. So just keep on living it.
I try.
Yep.
It doesn't come easy, but I appreciate what you said.
Yep, live it. And I know it's 11 o'clock out there. So sweet dreams tonight.
No, but thank you guys. I think this was well worth it. It was worth the wait to stay awake.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we're glad you were able to stay awake and join us today. I think for me, the big takeaway is the importance of exposing yourself to different cultures and different ideas, and how no matter what your business is, you can grow more that way than if you just shut yourself off or silo yourself into a little narrow niche. So
you're absolutely right. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. So thanks so much for being with us. And you've been listening to the Success Showcase. You can catch every episode at xvadio.com, the Apple Podcasts app, YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, Amazon Music, and wherever you find podcasts. Remember, make this your best week ever and make next week even better. We'll see you then.